Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Natural Sciences session, Flying, Friends, and Foes, Pollinators, and the Spotted Lanternfly. My name is Seth Cottle, and I'm the Library Director at Potomac State College. I'll be the moderator over the next hour. And before I introduce our instructors, I have a few housekeeping notes that I'd like to mention. First, please submit all questions through the chat, and we'll get to as many as possible before our time is up. Second, we have live transcript, which will offer closed captioning. That's located at the bottom of your screen, and that's sponsored by Potomac State College. And finally, if you have additional friends that are wanting to log in and check out the sessions, this event is also being live streamed on the Mineral County STEM Facebook page. So now let's meet our three instructors. Susan Parker. Susan works for the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection with the Youth Environment Program for District 2 out of Romney, West Virginia. She loves teaching students about their environment and helping make the earth a better place. Outside of work, Susan enjoys spending time in the outdoors, especially in her garden. So Susan, this is your time of year for sure.
Yes, thank you, Seth.
Our second instructor will be Kaitlyn Deskins. Kaitlyn graduated with a BS degree in geology from the University of Southern Indiana. Currently, she works as an AmeriCorps volunteer with the West Virginia Division of Forestry. Now that she's here in West Virginia, she's grateful to be able to teach kids about the forest and our impact on local environments. Kaitlyn continues to love learning about the natural world and how the small things we do have a big impact on the ecosystem. And our third instructor is Dr. Kristen Wickert. Dr. Wickert works for the West Virginia Department of Agriculture. She's the Spotted Lanternfly coordinator and plant pathologist for the state of West Virginia. And outside of work, she enjoys hiking and continuing to learn about the mushrooms, flowers, and insects of our wild and wonderful forests. Absolutely. And I see she has her mushroom earrings on this morning, so she's ready to rock and roll. And without further ado, ladies, I'm going to turn it over to you and go get them.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Seth, for introducing us. My name is Kaitlyn Deskins, and I'm an AmeriCorps with the West Virginia Division of Forestry. And for my presentation, we're going to talk about pollinators and pollination. So while I pull up the PowerPoint, can you guys put in the chat box what you know about pollinators or pollination? Oh no, it's got it right there. That's great. Whose is this?
Pollinators, insects,
Oh, maybe. Oh man. Do we have anything in the chat box?
We do. We have some great answers. Pollination is where insects take pollen. Some people mentioned that bees help move pollen. All right.
Good, that's good. So for my example, I have a bee as a pollinator, and this bee is going to collect pollen on its legs here at flower number 1 at the flower on the left. And pollen is just a fine to coarse grain powder that was created by the flower. So once that pollen gets on the bee's legs, the bee will then fly over to flower number 2, and that pollen that was from flower number 1 will then land inside of flower number 2. And that creates flower number 2 to be fertilized. So if we look at the flower here in the middle, on the second image on the right, you see a little red dot. That is the seed that is growing, and that seed, once it has grown to its full maturity, it'll fall out and land in the soil below. And then it'll wait for some rain or some moisture to come around, and it will start to bloom and sprout from the ground. And then it'll create its own pollen. And this cycle just continues over and over again. So before we go to the next slide, go ahead and put in the chat box what other pollinators you may know about other than a bee. I see hummingbirds, flies, small animals that fly. Those are some good examples. Some other examples may be a moth, a butterfly, hummingbird, a bat, and maybe some unexpected pollinators may be a beetle, wasp, and flies. So why do we have pollinators? What can they give to us? Go ahead and put that in the chat box and let's see what you guys know about what they give us.
Plants and food,
Makes food,
flowers and honey.
flowers and honey, all right. So those are some great examples. Some other examples that pollinators may give us are apples, blueberries, almonds, strawberries, chocolate, peaches, and pumpkins. And they also will pollinate trees that have flowers, or like the apple tree. It will do other fruit trees as well. And they also help us create materials for our medications, so when we become sick, we can have those medications. So without pollinators, our lives would be very different. We wouldn't have those great Hershey Kisses or Hershey bars, and we wouldn't have pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving or pumpkins to carve for Halloween. And we wouldn't have the materials to have some medications that we have now and that keep us healthy. So now that we have seen what pollinators can do and what pollination is, let's go ahead and do an activity. Here I have 3 flowers. You may have 3 bowls, and then in the middle of my flowers, I have Cheetos. You may do another snack such as Doritos, but I decided to use Cheetos for my demonstration. And then I have a little bee to help me out. His name is Mr. B. And you can say hi to Mr. B in the chat box if you would like. But he is going to fly to flower number 1. So everyone will go to your first flower and eat a couple of Cheetos or whatever snack you decided to have. And you'll see that we have some Cheeto dust on our fingers. That will be our pollen. And now that we have pollen on our fingers, we're going to fly to flower number 2. And we're going to eat a couple of those Cheetos as well. So now that we have taken pollen from flower number 1 to flower number 2. We have fertilized flower number 2. And that means that it's going to start growing a seed, and that seed will fall to the ground and get covered by soil, and then rain will come and it'll sprout and we'll create flower number 3. So even though our activity for the pollinator may be done, pollination keeps going all the time. The cycle keeps going on and on. So the job of a pollinator is never truly done. So for our next presenter, we have Susan, who will talk about the Bug Hotel.
All right, that activity actually made me hungry. Give me just 1 minute to get my presentation up. So now that we know why pollinators are important and what kind of their job is, we need to learn ways that we can help them. So Kaitlyn listed a whole bunch of different pollinators. She said bats, she said beetles, she said moths, she said butterflies and bees. And all of these things live in and around our homes, right? So we need to help these guys out. In the last few years, pollinators have decreased tremendously, especially our butterflies and our bees. So ways that we can help pollinators, because they do such great things for us, is to create some habitat for them. But first, I want to talk about some other things that you can do in your home, in your backyard to help them out. But we are going to build a bug hotel for our bugs to have a stay in our yard. All right, so these are just some simple things that you can do to help out pollinators in your own backyard. So the top left picture is a beautiful meadow of flowers, right? So we can plant native flowers whenever you're buying flowers for your garden or for your flower boxes, or even just a pot that's going to go out on your patio. Try to get native plants. Those are plants that live here naturally. So by planting native plants, we're already giving our native pollinators a place for them to eat and to maybe lay their eggs, those kinds of things. So number 1 would be to select native plants, and number 2 would be to plant them, right? Creating a nice little pollinator patch in your backyard, or maybe a corner of your yard that you don't really do a lot with, is a great way to, again, plant those native plants so that pollinators have a special place that they can go and enjoy those flowers. The second one, this picture there I have, it says, leave the leaves be. This is a great thing. A lot of different kinds of insects nestle into leaves. They overwinter in the leaves. They might lay their eggs on the bottom sides of those leaves. So I know we're very meticulous about keeping our yard really nice looking, but if we can leave just a small area of leaves, or even leave a pile of leaves instead of bagging it up and sending it to the landfill, we're creating another safe space for our pollinators to thrive. Another simple thing you do is down there at the bottom, see that blue dish? It actually has water in it. So it's filled with these clear beads and some rocks, and that's so that the insects don't go in and drown. That's so that they can land on those beads and those rocks and sip up some water that they need. So that's another great thing to do. And you can do that anytime in your own backyard, just a simple plate with some rocks and some water. Another thing is mowing. So we see this guy in his great big mower, and we know everybody loves a nice fresh cut lawn, right? In the summertime, that's the greatest part about spring, is that first time that you cut your lawn and smell that fresh grass. But a lot of times we overmow. We want that, again, that really pretty, fresh looking manicured lawn. But if we would not mow as much, we would give insects a chance to grow in the grass and to have more habitat to live and thrive in. And then we see this guy kind of with this container, and he's spraying. What he's doing is he's spraying pesticides. So we want to do our best to reduce the amount of pesticides that we spray. Those can be very detrimental to our bugs, because the reason we're spraying them is to get rid of insects, right? We want those nuisance insects gone out of our garden or our flower bed. But there's lots of other alternative ways to keep down insect populations so they don't eat up your garden or your flower bed. And you can look into those, and they're readily available at your local store. Talk to your parents about these kinds of things and see if maybe you can adapt one to change. And then the last picture there on that tree is what we would call a bat box. So today we're building a a bug hotel, but another great way, you know, bats are amazing pollinators. This is another way to allow them a home, a safe place where they can nest in, not in your house, so they're not a nuisance. You can buy a kit to put together. You can buy them already put together and put those in and around your home so that bats, another great pollinator, have a place to go. So those are just some simple things that you can do in your own backyard. So now we're going to get busy with building our bug motel. So I want you to gather these materials if you haven't already. So I've just got some things from my yard. I've got some leaves. I've got some different twigs, which I'm going to share back my screen again. And then I've got some paper towel rolls. I've got some paper straws there. I've got some pieces of scrap paper and then some scissors and tape. So those are all things, even if you don't have them gathered right now, you can do them after our presentation. So I'm just going to show you some quick examples before we go back to my screen and we build our bug hotel. So some of these are pretty elaborate bug hotels. And then there's another, the one in the middle is kind of more simpler. And that's what we're going to be doing today. But it doesn't have to be fancy. You can use all kinds of things from your yard. You see that one is just pallets. There's bricks in it. Looks like there's some broken clay pots where they've put in stones in them. They've taken some logs and drilled some holes because you're really creating crevices and places where the bugs can get in and hide and feel safe and lay their eggs. And then I have one last picture. This is a great one of a tire. You know, a lot of people have a spare tire hanging around their house. You could easily prop that up and make a little bug hotel. And I love that they use, see the green things in the middle? That's an old garden hose. So say you have a garden hose that gets punched a hole, you can cut those into different pieces and put them in there. And you'll notice kind of a reoccurring theme that we have a lot of cylinders. So we want cylinders as a great place for bees and beetles and other bugs to get in there and lay their eggs or have a home. And then we have these great, you could use an old milk carton, you could use an old water bottle, just anything you really have around the house can make a great bug hotel. So I'm going to stop sharing that. And then if you guys go to, I think it's speaker view, you can see a little better. So I have my background on, but hopefully that won't, you know, it might affect my screen. Well, we'll just do the best we can. So here is my bug hotel. I'll try to get it up there. I have this background, it's messing with things. So there you can kind of see, I just used a simple, I used a simple mini muffin box. There we go. You can kind of see it. There we go. So just a simple box around your house, an old box that you're going to either throw away or you're going to recycle. And then I have picked just some paper towel tubes, toilet paper tubes in there. I've used some empty yogurt containers that I had, some Yoplait containers that I cleaned out so that I could use those as an example. And then I gathered the things that I listed. So I've got some straws, I've got some twigs, I've got a pine cone I got on my yard this morning. Another thing that you could have is just a simple piece of paper that's rolled up, and you can either roll it loosely and put that inside one of your toilet paper rolls, or you could roll up something really tightly like this one. Hopefully you can see that. And I've taped that. So it's just another cylinder. I've used some scrap paper around the house. And then I'm going to take those and put them into the other cylinders that I've made and just fill those all in as much as you can. And you really just want to create a whole bunch of different holes and crevices so that those guys can get in there. And that's pretty much it. And once you've filled in all those crevices and holes, you can set that outside in your yard, find a nice shady spot kind of out of the way, maybe around the back of a building or against a tree, and just kind of keep an eye on it. See if you see bugs going in and out, and just enjoy it. And check on it once in a while. You might have to put some new materials in it, or maybe you get a bigger box later and you grow it. So enjoy your bug hotel, and I hope that you get some bugs and you encourage pollinators. Now I'm going to turn things over to Kristen, She is our Spotted Lanternfly coordinator with West Virginia Department of Agriculture, and she is going to tell us about a foe, the Spotted Lanternfly.
Thank you, Susan. That was great. I love learning about bugs. So I now am going to share my screen so we can have some more cool bug pictures. There we go. Okay. So like Susan said, I am a forest entomologist and plant pathologist for the state of West Virginia. Those are some big words, but what it means is I look for bugs and usually fungus in the forest that can potentially harm our native West Virginian ecosystem. One of the biggest threats that we have right now, or newest threats too to West Virginia, is this insect, the spotted lanternfly. So we're going to talk about who this bug is, and we're going to do a fun activity once we learn a fun fact or two. So the spotted lanternfly, you'll commonly see pictures of it, just like this one up in the top corner here with those beautiful red wings. Those are what we call hind wings. Insects have 4 wings on the top and hind wings on the bottom. And the thing I think is interesting about this is while that's really beautiful, you don't really see it too much when the insect is resting. This picture here with a few of these spotted lanternfly on a branch shows how they fold their 4 wings over their hind wings and they just have kind of a grayish pink color. But in science, we have things such as a common name for an insect like the spotted lanternfly, and then we have a scientific name. So that way scientists all across the world can be on the same page about what animal or plant or fungus they're talking about. So the scientific name for spotted lanternfly is Lycorma delicatula. And it is actually not a fly, even though its common name, misleading, says it's a fly. It is a hemipteran plant hopper. So that means that it hops around, which if you ever encounter one of these guys, you'll see how it hops. And it feeds with a straw-like mouth part and sucks out sap and valuable sugars from the plant that it's feeding on. And this is not a native insect. Like Susan was talking about native, things that were naturally found here and like evolved in our forests naturally. This guy is not from here. It's from Vietnam, India, and China. So a large part of Asia, you can actually find this natively existing in the forests over there. But it was accidentally brought to the United States in shipping cargo. So on one of those huge boats came across the ocean and it had some landscaping material, and that's where this little bug was hiding. But it first was found in Pennsylvania, so that's our neighbor to the north of us, in 2014. So that was about 6 years ago, 7 years ago. This last year has gone by fast. But the spotted lanternfly is also very fast in how much it's spreading. So if anyone knows where Philadelphia is in Pennsylvania, it is on the bottom right corner in the very east, southeast of Pennsylvania. And since 2014, it's spread all the way across Pennsylvania and is in other states too, such as West Virginia. So we have it now in West Virginia in Mineral County, and we also have it in Berkeley County. So why do you think that a bug could be a problem? Write in the chat about what you think. Why would someone like me care about bugs hurting our forest? How can they hurt plants? I'll give you a second to write in the chat about that. Okay, so we're going to move on. I'm going to tell you about how this insect causes damage in our forests. It is a very fast multiplier. So there's your math in this STEM conversation. It doesn't take very long for a few spotted lanternfly to turn into many spotted lanternfly. And they all use that straw-like mouth part to stab into trees and suck out sugar. So that means that the tree or the plant that it's eating isn't getting its own sugar that it needs to grow and to make fruit and things that we use in agriculture, like grapes or apples. And it can also like cause the tree to kind of bleed like this is going on, where a bunch of yeast is growing on what's coming out of the tree. But spotted lanternfly likes to eat a lot of stuff too. So it's not just one thing we're worried about in our forests. It's our forest trees, our grapevines, and then also things that you might even have in your garden, like this basil. You can see the basil is kind of like wilty. That's because it's not getting enough moisture and nutrients for it to survive on its own. They can also hurt plants in other ways than just directly eating it. They can cover plants underneath them with something called honeydew. And honeydew is pretty much just them being messy eaters. So a lot of the tree sap is falling down on the plants underneath the tree, and it's getting covered in this like sticky syrup, which other things like fungus like to eat. And so this picture on the left here shows that the foliage, the leaves of this plant are black. And that's because there's a fungus growing on them, and that blocks the plant from getting energy from photosynthesis. So we can actually see things like this in the forest when we have spotted lanternfly. Do you see how the bush underneath that tree has like all these black leaves and it's really bare, it's not full? Well, that's because all those leaves have died because they were covered in this sticky honeydew and then the fungus that's growing on the honeydew. And learning off of that, can you see why the invasive exotic spotted lanternfly is really able to impact the pollinator habitat that Kaitlyn and Susan brought up earlier, right? They showed you some really pretty pictures of flowers that pollinators go to. Well, this picture on the left is of a flower that's native to West Virginia, and it's dying because of spotted lanternfly. And then also the habitat, like what Susan was showing you, is being destroyed by the spotted lanternfly because now insects that are native aren't able to hide in those bushes that they usually call home. So how can you help the state of West Virginia find spotted lanternfly? You can just go on hikes with your family and look for things that look like the pictures I showed you here today. So those spotted lanternfly, even though the pictures usually have that beautiful red wing, they don't always have them out. So they kind of are camouflaged, but they're about an inch long, like so about as big as your thumb. And if you see them, you can send me an email at bugbusters@wvda.us. And you can also learn more about it. There's a lot of stuff on the internet. So if you spend time with your parents on the internet, you can Google search the spotted lanternfly and it can show you other things you can do to protect our state. And with that, we're gonna do a fun art project because STEM also includes art, right? So this is your very own spotted lanternfly that we are going to make. I literally just made this one earlier this morning. So it's really fast and very simple. And it's something that you can educate your friends and family about the spotted lanternfly. So what you need is a plain piece of paper. And if you got this picture on the right in a packet and you've already printed it out, you're good to go, but we're gonna work through it together. It's really simple if you didn't print it out, so don't get anxious. So here's our plain piece of paper. I have some scissors. I also have some colored pencils. If you have crayons or markers, that's totally fine. I have the color red, I have gray, yellow, purple, blue, green, and black. And really the only ones that are super important is the red, yellow, and the gray and the black. As you can see, that's the color of the spotted lanternfly that we're going to make. Okay, so first things first, we're going to take our piece of paper and make it into a square. So I'm gonna move my camera down a little bit so everybody can see. Okay, there we go. So first things first is we need to make our rectangular piece of paper into a square. So we can do that easily by taking one of the corners and lining it up so the edge is flat over here, right? We make a fold just like that, because this area here now is a perfect square, meaning all sides are equal. So I have a piece of paper here at the end that I don't need, so I'm going to draw a line here. And this is where my scissors come in handy. And open this back up to have my perfect square. And we can cut off carefully with our scissors this smaller rectangle that will now make our paper into a perfect square. And you've already started to make the folding lines for your spotted lanternfly. So just to make this easy, I made the lines have different colors so you can see it as we do it. So let's take a red marker or crayon over the line that we made, just like this, and we can label that line A, just like the image over here on the right side of the PowerPoint. Our next line, after we cut it, our next line is going to be B. And I used, it looks like I used green there to go across. It actually doesn't really matter what color you use, just as long as they're different so it's easy for you to tell. So this is our other diagonal, and we're going to label that B. Our next line goes right across, and that is going to be C. So we take it right across through the intersection of those other two lines, and we label that C. Now we have two lines that make up D, and that goes from the corners here of C down to the bottom. So you're kind of making a triangle through this. And I'm going to label both of those D just to keep everything organized. We have one final line that we're going to draw, and this one is E. So we're going to go underneath this intersection a little bit, just kind of randomly, and we'll go across, and we'll label that one E. Okay, so you have all of your lines. We're ready to go. Our next step, just to help you visualize this, is we're going to kind of roughly color in the areas of the wings. So we can make our spotted lanternfly beautiful and gorgeous after we fold it. Like you can unfold it again and make it any color you want. I mean, you can even make it any insect you want. But for now, just to help us out, I'm going to make a rough sketch of what the wing looks like. So here's the gray. Here's another one over here on the top. So the B and C line have a gray triangle here. And then you can see at the bottom, we have our red triangle. So we'll just color this roughly red for right now, and you can add more detail later on.
Hey,
Another
Kristen,
thing, yes.
we had a couple comments about going a little fast. Do you mind to maybe go over those lines just one more time? We have time.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, I would love to. So
Thank you.
our first, of course, our first line is the fold that we made in making the paper from a rectangle into a square. So we follow that line and go down a diagonal, and that one we label A. Our next one that we do is the opposite diagonal of the square, and we label that B. Our next line is C, which goes straight across through the middle of the intersection of A and B. And I just used blue so it's easy to follow along. Line D is actually two lines where we go from the middle of C down and make a triangle that bounces off. And then our final line is E, where we don't start at this intersection. We go down here and just go across to connect the two D lines. So after we have all of the lines, we can roughly color in our four triangles, which make our wings. So our four wings, which are the top ones, we can color them in roughly just gray. And you don't need to put a lot of detail because we're gonna fold it and unfold it for more you can have as much creative energy as you want when you color this on your own. So we have our 2 4-wing triangles up here. And at the bottom, the triangles that are made by the intersection of line D and line B, we can make them roughly red. Just fill it in a little bit so it helps you fold it and it's easier to see. And we'll do that over here on this side with the triangle that is made by D and A. Okay, our next little scribble is going to be just a triangle, which is the head of the spotted lanternfly. So here at this apex, we just put a little black triangle. And then our final colorized area is we're going to make the body of the spotted lanternfly, and we'll just make a yellow teardrop. So we have a yellow teardrop here that you can roughly color in, and then it will be able to be made more beautiful later. Okay, so we're going to start doing our folds, and you've already done one of the folds, which is really easy and great. And honestly, this was the hardest part. So you're good to go now. So I'm going to take this paper and we're going to make sure that the art is on the outside. So we're going to fold it where we have the artwork. Our colorization is on the outside. So we'll go over our line A. So here's line A and we fold it diagonally around it. And open it up again. So now we can see it. Our next move is going to be taking our line B, the other diagonal, with the artwork on the outside, and folding it along the green line B. And we can reopen. You can see how the paper is already kind of standing up on its own. Our next move is to fold horizontally along C. So C is the center line. We're going to fold it like a hot dog or hamburger bun. We go across, put a crease on C. We can reopen again, and you can see how it's standing. So this is the part where we actually have our fold, and it's very simple, so don't be scared of the paper. So after you fold line C horizontally, you'll take the paper and you'll pinch it, just like I am. And because of all the folds already and the creases that we made, it should just pop together where we pinch it together. We pinch it together and then we can compress it where the line C is on the inside and we formed a triangle. There we go. So I'll do that again for you a couple times because it was kind of messy. But we take line C and we go in, we pinch them together like this, they're pinched, and then we press. So line C, we take both of our thumbs, push together, and press. Great. All right. So our next move after the pinching of line C inward and creating a triangle is to take the line D. So these are our yellow lines here. You fold them up. And I bet you can see now how easy it is. You're almost done. You almost have your own spotted lanternfly. So we took both of those wings on line D and folded them down. And now we have our final fold of the line E underneath the red hind wings. And we flip it and fold it for the head, that little black triangle we made earlier. And you have your own spotted lanternfly. So we have lines D, those yellow ones. We folded the wings. We flipped it, folded along line E, and now we have our own spotted lanternfly. So there you go. And you can easily, open this up again, and it will get easier and easier the more you fold it, because it has all the creases that are already made. See how quickly that folded now? There you go. And you can unfold it and color it and make it as beautiful as you want, or you can make a really crazy colored spotted lanternfly. But now you are able to show people what to look for when the spotted lanternflies start to show up this summer. All right, thank you very much. And that was our entomology, pollinators, and foes period with Kaitlyn Deskins, Susan Parker, and myself, Kristen Wickert. And if you have any more questions, we'll let our moderator address them, and you can ask all of us any questions you want for the whole entomology, pollinators, and foes session. Thank you.
Yeah, that was perfect, Kristen. Well, Seth, our moderator, had to jump off, so I'm going to jump in. There was a question for you, Kristen, about whether they were related to the butterfly, which I answered no, because they're a leafhopper, correct?
Correct, yes. So a lot of people ask me about, they say, oh, are you working on that moth? And I'm like, nope, I'm not working on that moth, but I know what you're talking about, because it does look like a moth. And honestly, if you colored this, you could make a butterfly, right? You can do any kind of insect you want that has 4 wings like this. But yeah, the spotted lanternfly is not a butterfly or a moth. It is a plant hopper.
And there was one other question about how quickly they laid their eggs and hatch. We have about 5 minutes left.
Okay, so the spotted lanternfly lays eggs in around September, and they will lay about 100 eggs. So there's male and female, there's boy and girl spotted lanternflies, and the female will lay around 100 eggs before the female will die when it gets cold.
Was that for me?
Oh, she's muting it.
Yeah.
It's okay. So she will lay 100 eggs, and then those eggs will be able to withstand the really cold temperatures all winter, and they hatch in mid-April to the beginning of May. So we're actually getting ready, like my team with the West Virginia Department of Agriculture, we're starting to look for the egg masses, and also we're getting ready to look for them when they hatch. And when they hatch, they don't have these big wings. They're very small. They grow eventually to have these wings, but when they first hatch, they're really tiny. They're like small as your like pinky nail, and then they get bigger and bigger. And usually by July, we start to see them like this.
Great. And then let's see, we had one question about bats, and bats do not bite. You can safely put up a home for them as shelter. If you don't bother them, they usually don't bother you. And I was able to change my screen if you guys wanted to see quickly what my bug house kind of looked like. See how I have all those cylinders full of leaves and branches and straws and things. So expect yours to look very much the same. If you didn't have materials to do these 2 activities, all of the sessions are recorded and will be made available later. And on the registration, there was instructions for all these activities as well. And I think that concludes us. Did anyone have anything to add? Margaret, did you have anything to add? I have you muted, sorry.
Yep. No, I didn't have anything to add. And I will, just as kind of a closing part here, and if there are any more questions, though, Susan will pick up on those. But first of all, thank you all so much for taking the time to prepare this. It's very interesting. And also to remind participants, if you're looking for the directions for the spotted lanternfly origami activity, they were sent out with the registration email. So go ahead and refer back to that. And let's see. The other thing is to notice is that I will be placing here shortly in the chat the evaluation. If this is the only session you're attending, go ahead and complete. Otherwise, complete the evaluation at the end of the day. And we will also email out the evaluation. Another important point point is that we are recording each of these sessions, and on our Mineral County STEM website, we will share the recordings probably later next week. So if you want to refer back to anything, or if you want to, share them with any other friends and family. And also during the next presentation that will be coming up is a really good one on different engineering activities. And we'll talk about rockets and aerospace dynamics. And then you're going to hear a chance to hear from a great panelist of women engineers about, how to become an engineer. And even if you're not directly interested in engineering, it's still a good opportunity to consider and think about career paths. And so before we close, I guess if there are any more questions that have come up in the chat that this excellent team could respond to today. Susan, do you want to, because we've got a minute or two, do you want to share about any upcoming events with your program that you'd like to mention? Because I know you've always got a lot of connections.
Yes, we do a monthly challenge each month. So coming up March, we have the Great Outdoor Adventure. And how you do that is you take three pictures of yourself outside doing some kind of outside activity, and you submit that. This is with the West Virginia DEP Youth Environmental Program. You can go to our website, which is westvirginiadep.gov, I think, and just look for Youth Environmental, or you can Google that, Youth Environmental Program with DEP, and you'll see there our page with information about our program and information about, it says contests, and that's our March contest coming up. If you're in District 2, which would be Mineral County, Hampshire, Hardy, Grant, Pendleton, Jefferson, Berkeley, I also have my own challenge going on, which is to visit a state park. So you can visit a state park and send me a picture, and you'll be registered to win a prize. So basically, get outside, whether you do these challenges or not. The weather's been terrific, so enjoy that. Thank you, Margaret.
All right, and thank you all very much. And here in a few minutes, we're going to transition just to some slides that will run between the session and before the next one begins. But I also just want to remind you all that WVU Potomac State College and West Virginia University are good jumping off points toward any of these careers in natural science, chemistry, engineering, paleontology, astronomy, and wildlife. So keep that in mind. Even if you're pretty young in primary school, we're hoping these sessions will get you excited about these different fields, and then they might be something that you'll consider in the future. So thank you all for joining us for this past session, and we'll look forward to hearing from our presenters here shortly with the engineering session. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Stay tuned for our other sessions.
Thank you. Bye.